What if going through divorce or dealing with a major life trauma didn't cause you to sit around afterwards and go, who am I now? In reality, many situations can cause us to feel like we are dysregulated, not sure what's going on in our life, and not sure really who we are. And sometimes these things can cause us to have issues with our ability to see ourselves, our ability to handle relationships and situations. And even this kind of unresolved trauma can potentially have problems or cause us to have problems with our food intake and our ability to see ourselves as being successful throughout life. And what if all of these thoughts are really things that we have control over, and with a little bit of help and support, we can make a change? I have the perfect guest to share that information with us today. Ramona Kossowan is a women's empowerment coach, a gentle trauma release practitioner, and a fitness and nutrition expert who helps women achieve their best lives through helping them make adjustments that bring them back to themselves and help them identify issues that may be blocking them from moving forward in life. Ramona, I am so happy to have you here on the show today, talking about this and sharing with us the impact of trauma and the impact of change in life after big life transitions. So welcome.
Thank you so much. This is going to be fun.
It is. It is. And we were talking a little bit before. And before we get into the really great information that you've got to share with us, let's talk a little bit about how you got to this point and what specifically do you do to help your clients move forward through difficult life transitions?
Well, moving backward, earlier in my life, I started with an interest in holistic health and herbal wellness, and that was me at a different life stage. And I realized that I wanted more. I wanted to go deeper. So that's where it evolved into fitness. And I kept recognizing that women were quite often giving up on themselves. And there was just a lot of emotional barriers and blocks that were keeping them from doing what they wanted to do and feeling good about themselves. And I wanted to go deeper. So when the timing was right, I was just met with these opportunities to become first a personal empowerment coach. And then I think the real paradigm shift is when I learned about the gentle trauma release method. I started to learn about how trauma presents itself and how it blocks us from responding to normal healing modalities even. And when I was given the opportunity to train in this body-based method, for me, it was a resounding yes. I wanted to be able to have that impact and feel fulfilled in what I was doing. And I've not looked back since the last 6 years I've been doing that.
Yeah, and you're one of the few people that is actually certified in this training in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right?
There's more now, but when I emerged in 2021 I was the first graduate in Canada, so I'm woohoo,
Yeah.
right? But there's more that have come since then.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about the whole idea of trauma, because I think a lot of women, especially the women that I work with, because I tend to deal with a lot of people in high conflict divorce situations, they really they don't want to be seen as the traumatized person or the victim in the relationship. And, the same is true if you get laid off at work, if you say, if your spouse passes away, if your kids go off to college and now you're empty nest, maybe you suddenly, get a notification that your job is no longer going to be an option. You're going to be terminated because of whatever downsizing or whatever happens with your company. There's a lot of things that can cause trauma in life. So why is this whole idea of trauma so difficult for so many of us to accept that it's a real thing in our lives?
Well, I always had this belief, well, my story is not horrible enough, so that certainly wouldn't qualify as trauma. Other people had it worse than me. I'm doing okay. And I'm just a loser is what the problem is. Really, that's what I felt unconsciously. I'm just a loser, right? So I didn't think that, but unconsciously. But most of the people that I connect with, they're not actually clinically experiencing PTSD, which is a small segment of the population. It's the rest of us doing our best, trudging along with a whole bunch of stuff our nervous system is bracing for. Because our nervous system doesn't care how much time has passed or how much logic we apply and how much mindset work we apply to certain things. Our unconscious will override and continue bracing for an unresolved threat. Physical, emotional, social, financial. Those are all types of threat that our body will perceive and brace for forever, right? So this is where I've noticed that when that can be addressed in a way that feels complete and gentle and lasting, literally everything changes. You literally change without forcing anything. You can put the self-help books down. You can stop listening to the self-help podcast for just a moment and things start changing organically, which is to me just the most beautiful thing.
Right. So here's something that I hear all the time, and this stresses me out to no end. This causes me trauma, is the whole idea of if you just stay positive, if you just do your affirmations or do your mindset work, or, I love them, but listen to Tony Robbins or Mel Robbins or whoever it might be, whoever the latest guru is that people are listening to, you can fix your own trauma. Can you talk a little bit about the whole idea of trauma and how it does get trapped in our bodies, in our minds, and it's not as simple as just being Susie Sunshine and everything will go away?
Well, you've probably heard of toxic positivity, and that's quite often what's being foisted on people who are struggling, and then they start gaslighting themselves. I should be able to blah blah blah. Our unconscious nervous system does not work that way. Our body is very smart and very wise and very adaptive. So it adapts to its experience and it makes perfect sense without shame or judgment if you look at it from that perception. But we get in the lives now that we're building, we now have resources, but our adapted body and mind is still taking over and it sabotages us, so to speak.
Right.
It's not because you failed in some way. It's your unconscious nervous system is driving the bus based on the adaptations it made to feel safe or be safe emotionally, right, mentally, physically, financially, socially. So a lot of that stuff is nice and surface level. It's great if you don't have an excess of trauma or something's been resolved and you're so supported in your current life that in itself is helping you to heal. But I find a lot of people that I connect with, their bodies are desperately craving relief. They just want relief. And when I can help them to cross that bridge to massive relief that ripples out into all your areas of their lives, they see things differently and realize that no amount of working on it was getting them to this place until the unconscious part was resolved.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really what's so important is that if you know what the problem is, that's probably not the problem. That's just what's on the surface and what your mind is saying, okay, yeah, this is how you've rationally created this. That trauma is running from a very old program that served you very well in whatever situation you dealt with, but it's not serving you anymore. And until you can recognize the program and deal with it, it just keeps running.
And we're not meant to solve everything ourselves. Yes, I think it's important to take ownership of your well-being and recognize this isn't working for me, or I don't like how I'm showing up in this situation, and definitely be accountable for how you treat others. But sometimes we just can't cross that finish line to getting profound relief completely on our own. A lot of trauma is experienced in relation. So healing that, having a safe human to guide you and hold space for you through that space is quite profound.
Right. And having a structure. So what I appreciate about your method is there is a process that you use that's, if correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very individualized to the specific person, how you incorporate the different elements of what you do. Can you kind of walk us through what that might look like?
Yeah. So with gentle trauma release, it kind of holds hands with my empowerment coaching, and it's just all one big bundle. But there is a general structure. So the first thing we do is look at the symptoms, physical, emotional, and mental symptoms, how they emerge, what was going on, what makes them worse. And then we together address with nervous system based strategic protocols to release what triggered those symptoms, so that on a body level, those memories and emotions are processed and resolved. So that's directly addressing trauma, and that's always the first part. In the middle is addressing the residue of trauma. Who did you need to become and adapt to live with this situation? So we want to work with the identity, processing emotions so you can feel them without avoiding, escaping, numbing, or becoming them. The behaviors and habits and boundaries. So that's all part of the process, and it's nuanced. And then there's also a third part, which is building the new version of you, an empowered, trauma-free identity. That's all part of it, so that you don't feel codependent, like I need to get another coaching call. I mean, great if you need help, but it's like, I've got this, is where we want to get people to.
Yeah, and you have a really I love the analogy, and I want you to talk about this, the guest you don't want at your party anymore, because it's not like you have to take every single traumatic event in your life from birth to now and go through each one of these. Can you share that whole analogy?
Yes. So with gentle trauma release, we tend to gently look under rocks, and we look for what we would call core traumatic events. And those are the ones that really anchor the trauma in the body. And there's a bunch of stuff attached to it that feels kind of similar. Like, say you have a relationship where you were gaslit continually, or your spouse would throw something in your face that was very hurtful. When we address the one event that kind of stands out, that's like the noisy party guest that's too drunk and is breaking things. They're punted out the door, and then a whole bunch of their obnoxious friends leave with them, because when we resolve the one event, the rest that feel kind of like it go with it. So I can give a very specific example. I had a situation where a woman from childhood, if it's okay for me to say this, her dad would beat her with like a belt. If she didn't make her bed properly, you couldn't bounce a dime off the bed, right? Military background. So this was an ongoing, never-ending thing. So when we addressed one of the core traumatic events attached to this, her brain reorganized the entire thing, and she remembered the room differently. The furniture was arranged differently, so that event no longer could occur. They all left the room with that event, which is the power of our mind,
Yeah,
and the body speaking to each other.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because I think having an example really does help people understand, because they might be thinking, well, was that really trauma, or was that, and I think the thing, because I just completed this relational trauma certification, and one thing I learned was that everybody's trauma is different. So what might be traumatic for me in a memory that sticks out in my mind, somebody else may hear it and go, well, like you said at the very beginning, well, that's nothing. I've been through way worse than that. So it's really individualized. And one thing that I find really interesting that you talk about is this whole idea of how our eating patterns and how we think about food and how we think about our body image and how we think about all of these things can also be related to trauma. Can you share some light on that one, Ramona?
Yeah, especially when food noise, so that mental chatter around food is really loud and ongoing. It's just occupying space in your brain. It's usually a symptom that there's something going on with your nervous system. So, for example, a client I was working with had been caregiving a spouse that had a degenerative disease, and it caused his behavior to become quite abusive. So she was living in abuse, even though it wasn't his fault. She's still experiencing that.
Sure.
And later, after he passed, she was still carrying all the trauma. So she would be getting up at the crack of dawn to work out, power walking to work, making meal prepping, and then her brain would check out and she'd pull her to the drive-through and snarf down a big meal in it, like an apple pie. Was that sabotage? No, it was her body needing some kind of a relief and release. So if we talk about mindset and meal prep and motivation, that's completely irrelevant in this situation.
Right.
We need to get underneath it. So to the degree, right, there's nuances, of course, and then we throw in diet culture and the nervous system dysregulation of the binge restrict pattern that diets will cause, we don't want that. I don't want that for you, right? I want you to walk that middle ground. I'm good. I'm intentional. I'm mindful, and it's very easy to do so. That's what I want.
Yeah. And you have a moderation. Tell us about the moderation. I forgot the term.
Oh,
Moderation 365. Was that it?
yes. So
Okay.
Moderation 365 by Jill Fit. It's a certification. And when I found out about this, I was like, oh, this totally aligns with my values, because I'm working with clients on empowerment, trauma, fitness, but at some point they may have issues with how they're eating, right? And it's contributing to stress and body stress, and they might call themselves sabotaging. And when I learned about this method, which is about undoing the diet culture damage, and actually a structure and a framework to eat mindfully and satisfied and feel like I've got this in all situations, not when you're just in your own kitchen, not when you can meal prep for 6 days. Wherever you go, you can eat according to your values and trust yourself instead of going off the rails and then overcompensating.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because some of the diets that are out there now are so restrictive. Like, you literally whole macronutrient groups are not allowed, or that's all you can eat. We talked about the carnivore diet. We talked about, the clean keto and all of these really restrictive things. And we also talked about the medicine assisted or medically assisted diet options that are out there now. And I really liked your approach that any one of those could be a good option if it actually works for you. And to me, that shows how you are focused on the whole person, not just on this is the only option for everybody.
Yeah, like there might be reasons. Like I know some people, for example, do a ketogenic diet to reduce seizure occurrence. Or they've just like had like rampant blood sugar issues, and something like keto can help them get off that insulin roller coaster. Or like the carnivore diet when they have serious gut issues and can't tolerate grains, for example. But long term, I think it would be mindful of, where is this going? Is this supporting where you're going? How's your mental and emotional and physical health in this process? And I find, especially in midlife, I can't tolerate doing the same things I did in my 30s and 20s. I must listen to my body now and respect my current body, not what it was 15 years ago, and force myself to do something that my body's going to say a hard pass. Like,
yeah. I think that, and that's the thing, is so many women are going through these big life transitions, whether it's divorce or whether it's the loss of a spouse or a change in a job or dealing with caregiver burnout. That's a big one for the whole sandwich generation, and dealing with menopause, and all of a sudden everything that worked before, and even things that were easy like sleep, all of a sudden have become like insurmountable obstacles. And that just adds to the stress that you're experiencing. And then that leads to stress, and that builds on the trauma you've experienced. And it's a nasty cycle at times.
yeah, I find sometimes these big transitions, including menopause, give us actually an opportunity to look at how we've been existing, because quite often we've been tolerating things that we can't tolerate anymore. And it might feel like a crisis, but your body's just waking up, giving you a slap in the forehead and going, no, woman, you need to do this differently now. And you're like, oh, okay. So I guess I can't over function all the time. I can't do all the emotional labor. I can't push and then crash. I can't diet hard and then binge on the weekends. Right? Everything has to change at some point when we're faced with this big life transition. And it's actually an opportunity, even though it feels kind of messy.
Yeah. And again, this whole message just really resonates that you have to look at where you are and what you're experiencing and what may be the root causes of it for you, and then come up with a plan. And having somebody like yourself who has the structure and the training and the expertise to help us navigate that, that in itself is empowering.
Well, you know what just really lights me up? Like, I'm like, yeah, is when I hear a woman say one of two things. The first is, I finally see my worth. And this is from someone who did not. And I feel powerful from someone who did not. Their own words. I'm not feeding it to them. When someone spontaneously says that to me, that is like, yes, I've arrived.
Yeah. Oh, and what a gift to be able to give people, because so many people do not. So many women in midlife do not feel that way, whether it's because of relationship issues, trauma, body image, whatever. All of these pressures and stressors that we're dealing with really push us down as women. Sad to say, but it's still happening in 2026. There's not a lot of natural empowerment out there, especially for women 45 and up. I would say, in my experience, anyhow. Now, you have an amazing gift for everybody listening. Can you tell us a little bit about the who's running the show gift?
Yeah, so this is a fun, free guide to help you take notice of areas of your life where the part of you that's showing up maybe isn't your most empowered self. So that might be in your relationship, your love relationships, your family, your work, your business, money, how you relate to your body and food. And you might notice, okay, that area of my life, that part of me, she's not that empowered. And this guide will help you to recognize which archetype for you is dominant, why she's showing up, what she's trying to accomplish and protect you from. And it shines a light on an opportunity for healing instead of judgment. And then you can take the labels off.
I love that. Ramona, if people want to find out more about what you do or reach out and work with you, what is the best way to do that?
So I have for websites, ramonakcoaching.com and gentletraumacoach.com. And I am on, the usual socials under Ramona K Coaching. LinkedIn is Ramona Kossowan. So certainly connect with me there.
And I will make sure all of that information is in the show notes. And as a parting words of wisdom, what's one piece of advice you would like to give anybody listening to this episode who hears themselves somewhere in the conversation we've had?
Well, something that's landed with me lately is that gentleness actually leads to your power. So sometimes we're told to, armor up, buckle up, white knuckle through. And when we can be gentle with ourselves and give attention and love and nurturing to the parts of ourselves that are wounded, we actually become so much more whole. We bring those wounded parts home. We love on them. We take charge and we give ourselves grace through all of it. And you become so much more powerful and magnetic for the life that you're wanting to create.
Fantastic. What a positive way to wind this up. I want to encourage you, if you have enjoyed this episode of Spotlight on the Divorce Expert, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you got a comment, throw it down in the comment box, and Ramona and I will be checking in and answering any questions you may have. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much.